Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator, and in today's episode we are checking out the FS HUD, the Microsoft Flight Simulator ATC replacement software. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. Okay guys, so as I said, today we're checking out FS HUD. Now I've already done a couple of flights with it. Some went well, some went bad. And today we're just going to try out a quick flight from San Francisco up to Portland, Oregon. We are taking the Cessna Citation Longitude because I haven't brought her out in a very long time. Kind of miss flying this aircraft. Thought it'd be kind of fun to bring it out. So let's go ahead and jump into the cockpit for a second so it can be nice and quiet. And let me tell you a few things about the initial setup and what I think thus far about FS HUD. So FS HUD for the installation process is actually very, very well done. And from the first time that you download the initial software, there are links to all of their guides right on the main page of the software. Everything from installation to Microsoft Flight Simulator settings, an application guide, creating a flight plan, and the flight steps and what to expect. I highly recommend you guys read through all the documentation that pertains to Microsoft Flight Simulator, meaning that there is one there for Active Sky and there's one there for Prepared. Obviously for MSFS, you don't have to worry about that. But the rest of them, I highly recommend you go through for the first time, as it really does shed a lot of light on the software and how it functions. One immediate con that I have against it is that there isn't any kind of voice activation yet. I don't know if that's a future plan. I really hope it is, but at the moment, there isn't any way for you to use your voice to communicate with the software. I would really like to see that implemented. I think that was a huge feature and a huge game changer with Pilot to ATC. Was that you could actually communicate with the tower. My only problem with Pilot to ATC was the phraseology was a little weird, and there was often times where things just didn't line up correctly. But we're also going to be revisiting that one here in a minute, now that there's some competition for the sim. So we will be talking about that one again in a week or so here. Now, as far as the fluidity and the overall function of the software, I think it works really, really well. One of the other things that I actually think is a con, I'm going to list this as a con, and I hope this gets back to the developers because I would really like to see them at least make this next part optional, and that is that the first officer is the way that I am simulating the event, takes care of all the radio transfers. So anytime that there is a request to change frequencies once you're airborne. I've noticed that it's primarily once you're airborne. The first officer, quote unquote, again simulating that, the software takes care of all of the frequency changes as well as the responses. And you guys will see that in today's demonstration of the software. So I kind of don't like that. I think the fact that it's forced, unless I'm missing a setting, which I don't think I am. I've gone all through it, but gosh, if I am, by all means, I would love to know that. The only reason why is because I think that part of the fun is being able to actually go down into your consoles and manipulate the frequencies. Now, the cool part that I will say about it is that the software also changes the frequencies inside of the aircraft and vice versa. You can preset them and swap them over if you're fast enough. I will say the software is pretty quick to change the frequencies and begin the next line of communication. So, now, what I also like about it that I will say is I actually think it's a pretty decent training aid. The phraseology that's used is pretty on par, and at the very least will definitely give you a good understanding of how to get into it if you're someone who is looking to get into VATSIM. One of the comments that I received when I did the news article on this the other day, or the news video, excuse me, was that, you know, if you want this kind of interaction, why not just do VATSIM? And the person was talking directly to me, and VATSIM is absolutely something that I keep meaning to set up and somehow keeps winding up on the back burner, but it is something. However, for someone who is maybe a little shy, someone who isn't, you know, or doesn't feel comfortable talking to live people, I think this is a really good alternative. Another big pro that I want to mention is that the radio traffic, although some of it does have that metallic robotic sound to it, and I mean, and to an extent, some of that can't be avoided because these voices have to be pre-recorded. And by pre-recording, I mean they have to record saying the word number 1. Then recording saying the number 2, etc. Right? And so then when you're actually hearing it, all these different recordings are actually put together to make the response that's appropriate for what you're doing. It is my understanding, unless they're just using different robotic voices that are available in Microsoft, they all seem to have an Australian accent, which I'm totally okay with. So I don't think that it's all just robotic. I think a lot of it was recorded voiceovers. But that's just speculation. The ambient traffic that you hear over the radios is definitely a very nice addition. Robotic or not, it is a nice addition. You hear quite a bit of it, and it really brings the cockpit to life. It really helps the immersion on some of those longer flights, and you really notice the difference entering and exiting airspace, as you can really start to tell when you're getting close to a busy area. And that was really cool. That was really cool. It really intensified the approach and intensifies the takeoff. Ooh, sorry, I had to get a drink. All right, so without further delay, let's talk about where we're at today. So what I'm going to do real quick, you guys can sort of see it. I'm leaving it like this. You guys have seen me create a SimBrief flight plan 219 times. So I'm just going to create a new flight plan just to make sure that it's up to date. It's been sitting for a few hours, so I do need to change it and make sure that we're right. I want to make sure that the runway departures are all good. Let's see here. Longitude. Where's the longitude? Where are you? There you are. All right, and 45 minutes here for our IFR flight. And it looks like everything's the same. 28 left is our departure runway. 28 left is the arrival. Cool. Yeah, we'll leave it as is. Looks like everything stayed the same, so I'm just going to generate it. Keep the times current, man. Keep it current, bro. And then we'll get our PDF like I always like to have. Let's fuel and weight our aircraft. And for the moment, I'm going to turn that off. And let's go ahead and set our weights and balances. Really, all I'm worried about is the fuel. 4876 is the fuel load that we're looking for today. Let's see here. 4870, 4961. That's almost 100 pounds more than we need. But you know what? We're going to take it because I'm not going to worry about the payload. So therefore, we're not going to worry about being overweight. We do, in the longitude, want to make sure that we take note of our MAC, which is 28.53. We'll need that later on to set up our trim for takeoff. By the way, guys, if you have not already been made aware, I have a full flight tutorial guide for the Cessna Citation Longitude that walks through all the steps that we're about to go through. Now, admittedly so, I'm probably going to do some things out of order. I'm not necessarily following the checklist today. I'm more interested in showing you guys the FS HUD, but we'll keep it as close as we can. So let's see here. Let me get back to the start of this little process here. And let's see here. We did that part, and here we go. All right, so let's begin this little endeavor of ours. So we want to make sure the parking brake is set. Our throttles are at idle. Flaps are retracted. The speed brake is also retracted. We want to make sure that we get some electrical power going here. Once we have secured that the engine or that the aircraft is secure, landing gear handle is down. So let's get some electrical power going here. For electrical power, we're going to do standby power to the on position. Then we can turn our left and right batteries on. Now, very often with the Cessna Citation Longitude, due to cost and finances, actually, believe it or not, external power isn't typically used. Typically, they'll just use the APU because it's just as fast for them. They're faster at getting the flight plan entered, all the FMC set up, and then get on and get out of here. Given the fact that we don't pay anything for it, let's go ahead and flip on the external power. So we have ground power established. So now we can continue moving on here. And when it comes time, we'll make sure that we set our external power to off. All right, and we do want to make sure that the auto brakes, or excuse me, auto spoilers are disabled. And we have our left and right battery is already on. We're not turning on the APU. APU Gen, therefore, can remain off. And let's go ahead and move on down to the next step. And the first step that we want to do with FS HUD is get our ATIS. So there's a couple different things that we can do here. Let me make sure I bring up the right screen. And let me just minimize that for now. We don't need it for the moment. Hey, you guys get to see my desktop. Boom. Now you don't. So let's see here. The first thing that we want to do, we can actually just come right up here if we want and find it, but it is easier to select Start SimBrief Flight first. Up here, you would enter in your SimBrief user ID, and if entered incorrectly, it should automatically import. We're going to go down to continue. Oh, let me move that up just a little bit so you guys can see that. There we go. And we'll hit continue here. Here's our flight. Now you can take your flight route here. This is actually pretty awesome here. And here's, you know what? I'm just going to say this is our flight route. I'm not going to go any further than that because I don't want to spoil anything here, but we got our flight route here. So let's go ahead and just go start flight. All right. Wait for the standby to clear. It's loading everything in. And I'm going to turn the sim sounds back up so you guys can hear everything. Okay, so you can see it shows parking 216. If for any reason it needed you to move your aircraft, there would be a button here that says move to parking 216. You'd click it and boom, your aircraft would jump. So pretty easy stuff. Not much to worry about there. Now we can request clearance and departure, but first let's go ahead and just get our ATIS. So I'm going to come down. Where the heck are we again? Seattle? No, San Francisco. Let's see here. Travis clearance, Travis approach. Did I pass it? There it is. San Francisco ATIS.
Information. Whiskey 2145. Wind. Calm. Visibility 10 kilometers or more. Sky condition clear. Temperature 14. Dew point 1. Altimeter 29991. Transition. Altitude 18,000. Transition level. Flight level 190. Landing runway 19 left. 19 right. 28 left. 28 right.
Cool.
Departure runway 19 left. 19 right. 28 left.
And to show you guys what I mean about the radios, we can just transfer off it and we're good. Okay, just takes it away from there. So that part is pretty awesome. So we've got our ATIS going. Let's go ahead, and you guys are going to see my desktop flash a lot. I have to use, so the drag about this that I will tell you from a content creator standpoint is at the moment, I hope they fix this. Again, I hope this gets back to the developer. OBS will not pick up this screen. It just shows a black box. So I have to use a very hybrid, janky display capture in order to capture this on a different monitor. So it's been kind of weird, but we figured it out. Let's request the flight clearance. It'll automatically tune to clearance and departures.
San Francisco clearance, November 1950 Foxtrot, parking 216. Request clearance to Portland with information. Whiskey. November 1950 Foxtrot, cleared to Portland via Trugan 2, Golf Romeo Tango Foxtrot Lima. Departure, runway 28 left. Initial climb 4,000. Then is filed. Squawk 6455. Cleared to Portland via Trugan 2, Golf Romeo Tango Foxtrot Lima. Departure, runway 28 left. Initial climb 4,000. Then is filed. Squawk 6455. November 1950 Foxtrot. November 1950 Foxtrot. Redback correct. When ready, contact San Francisco ground 121.8.
Okay.
When ready, contact San Francisco ground 121.8. November 1950 Foxtrot.
So obviously a little bit of goofy lingo there. Redback instead of readback. Lima instead of Lima. So, you know, not everything's perfect. Definitely not. Let's see here. Wing lights can come on and the pulse lights can come on. All right, and we're not worried about anti-collision or anything like that yet. Emergency lights are armed. Barometric pressure is set. Oh, you know what? I did miss that. What's the transponder code? We were told to squawk 6455. Let's get on down there. Oops, wrong button. There we go. All right, so let's go to our oh, he already, and perfect example. So I didn't even know he did that. Normally I beat him to it. I think he does that right after the response, but you can see the first officer, or quote unquote the software, actually set the transponder for us. Now the transponder is still in standby, which is where it should be. So let's continue on. At this point, we're going to enter in our route. And we're going to go to the procedures, departure, Trunking 2. Runway, departing runway 28 left. The transition was Griftle, or Grateful. Grateful. I think I got that one. Grateful. It's always a challenge for me. It never ends. Okay, so anyway, let's keep on going. So from there, we're going to go back over to our flight route. And from Grateful, if I double check our Simbrief flight plan, I don't know if it actually showed in this or not. It might have been something different. Yes, it is something different. They had us going somewhere else. And unfortunately, that was the other thing that I actually don't like about this. From the software, I should have taken note of that flight plan beforehand because it's slightly different than what Simbrief calculated for the arrival. And I can't remember what the first direct to, but we will be told to head that direction, hopefully, if it follows as it has been in my testing. But as far as I can tell, there isn't any way to go back and review your flight route once you hit start flight. I haven't found any way to go back and do that. So that's okay. We'll just we'll let them guide us. I do know what the transition point is, so we'll talk about that later on. All right, so let's see here. We are going to, where did I say we're going to? KPDX. Portland. Okay. And now let's go ahead and enter in our speed bugs. I do not need that on the screen for you guys. That's probably driving you nuts. Let me also minimize that. Yay! And let's see what we got going on here. So we've entered in our flight plan, and now we need to take a look at our speed bugs. I'm just going through my guide here. I'm looking for a chart to help us calculate our V-speeds. So the first thing that I'm going to need here in order to calculate our V-speeds correctly is I'm going to need to know our takeoff weight and that MAC. So our MAC is going to be 28.53%, and our total takeoff weight is 29,900 pounds. So based on 29,900 pounds, we should be looking for a V1 of 109 knots. V rotate is going to be 112. V2 will be 124. And FTO is always 185 knots. FTO is maximum takeoff speed. You must be off the ground by 185 knots. Otherwise, you risk damaging the aircraft. But I guarantee in this aircraft, on most days, 185 knots, if you're still on the ground, you're probably through the fence. You know, because this thing accelerates so freaking fast. It's freaking awesome. I love this aircraft. And I forgot how much I love this aircraft. So we now have that set. So the next thing we need to do is set our trim. And again, based on our center of gravity, which again was, I already forgot what it was, 28? Yep, 28.5. Following that down. 28.5, about 5 degrees down on the flaps. Now, unfortunately with this aircraft, we do have the gauge here, but it doesn't actually give you a reading of what the trim setting is. It doesn't tell you what the percentage is. Now, you can turn on tooltips, and as long as you do that, then you can see it down on the trim wheel. For me, I hate tooltips, so what I do for this particular aircraft is I'll just jump out to the external view, hitting the end key, wait for those gauges. You can see the trim there on the right-hand side. Push that nose forward to our 5% that's required. Oh, went too far. There we go. Back in the cockpit, we're done. And you can see it's adjusted here, so it works out well. All right, so we have our trim set for takeoff. We have our takeoff speed set for takeoff. We have our flight plan set for takeoff. We have our transponder set. I think we are ready for engine start. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I am missing. We've gone through the flight plan. We've gone through our speed bugs. We've gone through the trim. We have our transponder. Yep, we're good to go. So at this point, let me move back down to our checklist here. Let's do some last minute settings here. We want to make sure that our nav source is set to the FMS. We're getting ready to start the engines, so let's come up top. Recog lights, anti-collision lights. We've set our initial altitude. Let's request some startup, shall we? Ooh, buddy. All right. So you can do request pushback and startup. The software doesn't actually do the pushback for you, so you still have to do it yourself. So I just do request startup.
San Francisco ground, November 1950.
I'll shut up.
Parking 216. Request startup. November 1950 Foxtrot. Startup approved.
Give that an enter. And request pushback. Okay. And they did give us a startup approved. So let's go ahead and get that APU rolling. The nice thing about this aircraft's APU is it starts very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. And we can see that right down here. Oh, darn it. Now you can see it. I'm probably going to leave the window off at this point, guys, just so you can see the flight. All right, so we're at 100%. We're going to go to APU Gen on. We can turn external power off. At this point, we can release our parking brake. Begin the push. Start that right engine.
Oral warning.
Oh,
Okay.
fuel valve. That would help right there. Knew I missed something there. While we're getting pushed and the engine started, we can turn our flight directors on. Flight level change. I'm going to switch speed from FMS to manual. And we do want 185 knots as our initial target speed. All right, one good. Repeat, or two good, I should say. Now starting one. Set the parking brake. Push back complete. I get that it's just a Longitude, but I feel like you would need more than the hand truck for that, but maybe not. Pitot and static heat can come on. Emergency locator transmitter. Let's go ahead and arm it. Just waiting on engine 2 there. We can go ahead and request a taxi clearance while we wait.
San Francisco ground, November 1950 Foxtrot, request taxi. November 1950 Foxtrot, taxi to holding point, runway 28 left, via Charlie, hold short of runway 01 left, 19 right. Taxi to holding point, runway 28 left, via Charlie, hold short of runway 01 left, 19 right, November 1950 Foxtrot.
Okay. And by the way, guys, I do have the simulator sound turned down pretty low because I want to make sure you can hear all the communications. All right, let's turn our gens on. Open the bus tie. APU gen can now go off. And we can shut down the APU. All right. We don't have any amber lights. Engines are all running. Flaps are retracted. Autopilot panel set. Barometric pressure set. Initial altitude set. Initial speed is set. CDI is set to the FMS. Flight plan is complete for the departure. And now the only thing we need is our taxi light. Okay, and I will bring up the screen one more time because I do want to show you guys something. Okay, so this arrow here, don't ignore it. This is probably one of the things that I think that needs to be definitely worked on. It's a little too precise, meaning that, so what it's doing is it's very clearly calculating waypoints in whether that be in space or on the ground, in this case for taxi. You need to make sure you hit those waypoints. You need to make sure that you hit wherever the arrow was pointing at. If you pass that location, it does not like to jump to the next one. It doesn't seem to recognize that, hey, I've passed this point, change it to something else. So I will tell you that. Be very, very cautious when it comes to this arrow, or it will drive you crazy. The other thing that I will say about this is third-party airports. For example, Tucson International, the airport that I normally use, or the scenery I use, is a completely remodeled version of modern-day Tucson International. I think the default scenery for Tucson International is probably easily over 10 years old and very much so inaccurate. And the taxi routes slightly changed from the parking locations near the old tower. And this posed a problem for me. It was a little bit of a pain in the butt getting where I needed to be. So just definitely even in flight, pay attention to that arrow. Keep heading mode on the standby, and you guys will see me doing some of that here. So I'm going to go ahead and, I guess, well, here, let me see if I can. I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. And like I said, the window will auto hide. I don't know if I can I move this? There we go. I'll try to keep it something like that for now. And then once we get airborne or get ready for takeoff, I'll definitely be shutting that down. But if I mention I'm following the arrow, that's what I'm doing. Actually, you know what? Let's just stick to that. Let's just stick to that. I think I'm just going to stick to, if I tell you guys we're following the arrow, that's what we're doing. So let me bring that back down here. There we go. Let me bring this back up so you can see it. And this is, I'm sorry guys, I don't mean to be delaying. It's just this is sort of the difficult part about trying to showcase this software, is it makes it a little tricky. Okay, so I'm going to taxi. We're releasing the parking brake. And I'm going to be following that arrow. Not looking at any maps. That is the one thing that I will say, is that for the most part, and on the default scenery, it seems to be doing just fine. It really does, as far as the taxi goes. I haven't had any issue with any of the default scenery. I was going to do a flight out of Phoenix, and my only problem with that is the default scenery. It wanted me to cross the road bridge over from 26 from the 26 side of the airport over to 25 right, and trying to cross the bridge. The scenery itself is so messed up that it crashed the airplane. So that's something that Asobo needs to resolve. I know there's an aftermarket scenery. I just haven't had a chance to test it out yet. All right, so now it's telling me to turn to the left. You want to taxi slowly when it comes to junctions or turning points, because it does take the arrow a second to sort of keep up. But it's doing very well right now. It is a cool software. I'm all in all, I'm very impressed with it. It's got a few bugs, a few, things that definitely need to be ironed out. What the hell are you doing? Oh, okay. I thought it was just like hauling butt down the taxiway. I'm like, what? Hello. So like I said, it's got a couple little issues. Nothing too crazy. And if for any reason, we run into something that doesn't work out right, then we'll just, we'll wing it. You know what I mean? But at the very least, you guys will still see a much different flight experience than what we've seen before using ATC. I am taxiing like a bullet. Every time I touch the brakes, the spoiler's disarmed. I guess that kind of makes sense. Alright, so here's a runway. Oh, wow. There's 19er, right? Oh, stop.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5.
Were we departing on 19er, right?
San Francisco Tower 120.5. November 1950
Maybe we are.
Foxtrot. San Francisco Tower, November 1950 Foxtrot. Request cross runway 01 left, 19 right.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Cross runway 01 left, 19 right. When vacated, contact ground 121.8.
Cross runway 01 left, 19 right. When vacated, contact ground 121.8. November 1950 Foxtrot.
That's awesome. That's the first time I've heard it. Actually, I think it's the first time I've had to cross a runway, though, while using it.
San Francisco ground, November 1950 Foxtrot. Runway vacated with Charlie.
I taxied too far, guys.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. November 1950 Foxtrot. San Francisco Tower, November 1950 Foxtrot. Request cross runway 01 right, 19 left.
I totally already did.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Cross runway 01 right, 19 left. When vacated, contact ground 121.8.
Oops.
Cross runway 01 right, 19 left. When vacated, contact ground 121.8. November 1950 Foxtrot.
Okay, so now the arrow. So,
San
there we
Francisco
go.
ground, November 1950 Foxtrot. Runway vacated with Charlie. November 1950 Foxtrot. Continue taxi via Charlie. Hold short of runway 10 left, 28 right. Continue taxi via Charlie. Hold short of runway 10 left, 28 right. November 1950 Foxtrot.
So that was my bad. Bad habits die hard, I guess. And the AI traffic that you guys are seeing, I believe, is being injected by the software. Oof! What was that? Oh! He died. He didn't make it. Now, one thing that was also announced in their own release notes before you ever even purchase the software was they did say that right now AI traffic being injected by them is will be jumpy. And that's because that has to do with the SDK, and hopefully as the SDK matures, that will no longer be an issue. But they gave us the heads up on that that was something to expect. And I'm hoping to eventually also see some better liveries. All right, we're coming up on our runway. Actually, I think we're departing from 28 left. So it's still telling me to move forward. I'm following the arrow.
November
Yep, there's the stop.
1950 Foxtrot. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. November 1950 Foxtrot. San Francisco Tower, November 1950 Foxtrot. Request cross runway 10 left, 28 right.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Cross runway 10 left, 28 right. When vacated, contact ground 121.8.
Cross runway 10 left, 28 right. When vacated, contact ground 121.8. November 1950 Foxtrot.
Which is weird because the next one's going to be our runway.
San Francisco ground, November 1950 Foxtrot. Runway vacated with Charlie. November 1950 Foxtrot. Continue taxi via Charlie. Continue taxi via Charlie. November 1950 Foxtrot. November 1950 Foxtrot. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. Contact San Francisco Tower 120.5. November 1950 Foxtrot.
And then now we have the option to select a ready for takeoff. So it does wait for us to say that.
San Francisco Tower, November 1950 Foxtrot. Runway 28 left, ready for departure.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Line up, runway 28 left.
Line up, runway 28 left, November 1950 Foxtrot.
So flaps for takeoff.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Wind calm, runway 28 left, cleared for takeoff.
All
Runway
right.
28 left, cleared for takeoff.
Line our
November
heading bug.
1950
And then real quick to show
Foxtrot.
you guys, you do also get the wind direction and speed. So, pretty cool. All right. So let's get rolling here. Engine stable. Arm the auto throttle. And we're off. Right rudder. Right rudder. There's V1. Positive rate, gear up. I'm going to go very quickly to engage the damn autopilot here. I'm always a little slow. Where's my nav mode? There's my nav mode. At this point, we're going to increase our speed to 250 knots. Now, I am actually turning on course too soon, so I'm going to come off.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Contact Travis. Approach 119.9.
Never mind, it's not complaining. We're going back to nav mode.
Contact Travis. Approach 119.9. November 1950 Foxtrot.
But even during flight, you pay attention to this arrow.
Travis approach. November 1950 Foxtrot. Shooting to departure. At
Don't do what I just did.
600. Climbing 4,000.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Radar contact. Continue climb 11,000.
Continue climb 11,000. November 1950 Foxtrot.
All right, got us set for 11,000. Continuing our climb. Anyway, yeah, watch that arrow. Don't do what I just did. Please don't. It'll frustrate the crap out of you if you miss it and turn too soon. When the arrow switches, switch over to nav mode as long as it matches up. If it doesn't match up, use your heading mode. Like I said, there's a couple issues that need to be adjusted. And I think what needs to happen is those waypoints in space that very clearly it wants to hit. I think that they need to be bigger. They need to give you more room for margin of error, flight traffic, crosswind, etc., right? And that gives the software a bit of a larger window too. Oh gosh, I forgot to put the flaps up. Gear did come up, right? Yes, it did. Okay. Poor engines, they're like, put the flaps up. Oops.
977 established on inbound track.
977. Contact Oakland Tower 118.3.
Contact Oakland Tower 118.3. 977.
And that's the start of the ambient traffic. It gets really cool from here. It really adds a lot. Robotic sound or not, it really does help.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Climb and maintain. Flight level 200. Altimeter 2987. Contact Oakland Center 121.25.
Climb and maintain. Flight level 200. Contact Oakland Center 121.25. November 1950 Foxtrot. Oakland
Oops.
Center, November 1950 Foxtrot. Inbound through at 10,400.
We can now do a speed climb, 280 knots.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Radar contact. Continue climb. Flight level 200. Altimeter 2987. Continue climb. Flight level 200. November 1950 Foxtrot.
What I read.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Climb and maintain. Flight level 290.
Why did we keep
Climb and
climbing to
maintain.
begin
Flight
with?
level 290. November 1950 Foxtrot.
Oh, because we're not in altitude mode. Shame on me. I got lucky with the previous ones, man. Where are you going?
November 1950 Foxtrot.
Here we go.
Proceed direct ISAX. Proceed direct ISAX. November 1950 Foxtrot.
Ice axe. Boom, we're on our way. Nice. And I remember what the next one was, so we can set that up a second. Give me just a minute. Next one was This is from the approach plate. It's the initial fix. WIDMR. Cool. Next 2 locations are set. Should be smooth sailing from here. The only thing that we have left to do now is get clearance up to our cruise altitude. We're still pretty far away from cruise. I think we're going to 39,000 today is our target. Well, we'll see what happens.
0 Foxtrot, climb and maintain. Flight level 355. Climb and maintain. Flight level 355. November 1950 Foxtrot.
At this point, we are high enough. We'll switch over to Mach. And let's look for Mach 0.76.
Best at 10,000. 485. Radar contact. Maintain 10,000. Maintain 10,000. 485. 1901. Radar contact. Expect visual approach. Runway 17. Report when ready for descent.
Expect visual approach. Runway 17. Report when ready for descent. 1901. 1901. Ready for descent.
1901. Descent.
All right. So I was using
November
the
1950 Foxtrot. Radar contact. Maintain. Flight level 355.
oh, they actually.
Maintain. Flight level 355.
Where'd my mouse go?
November 1950 Foxtrot.
All right. So they actually want us to maintain it. Initially, I was told to climb. Oh, maybe not. No, I wasn't. Disregard. Thought I saw something about climbing to 360. So all we've done is we've been handed off. Oh, you know what? It's because I was using I was increasing the simulator speed, and so I think it bounced the aircraft up a little bit.
50 Foxtrot. Expect with RNAV Zulu. Approach. Runway 28 left. Report when ready for descent.
Awesome. So we're just going to report that we're ready for descent. So let me show you guys this part. So it wants you to review your landing. So we're coming in on the RNAV Zulu. Vectors will be vectored in for the arrival. The transition point's Widmere, which we already put in. We don't need any of the transition, and we're expecting for parking 66. So at this point, we can just hit apply. That accepts the arrival.
Expect with RNAV Zulu. Approach. Runway 28 left. Report when ready for descent. November 1950 Foxtrot.
Seattle Center 50.
And we'll just tell it ready for descent as well.
Delta Sierra Delta at 16,000.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Ready for descent.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Descend and maintain. Flight level 260.
Descend and maintain. Flight level 260. November 1950
So we're going to start that. I'll finish that in a second. Let's put our speed back to about Mach 0.74. Do a flight level change.
Proceed direct craft. Maintain 10,000.
Proceed direct climb. Maintain 10,204.
We also need to finish selecting our RNAV approach.
Seattle Center 9885 at 10,000.
210.
RNAV 28 left Zulu.
Approach at
Transmission is Widmere. Hit load.
Runway 17. Report established on localizer.
We can go back. Go back.
Half ILS approach at 3,300 runway 17.
Okay, so it did this again. I hate it when it does that. We want to resume the direct. We haven't been told to change course. I entered the approach and it bounces back to the previous leg.
7,000.
Alright, and she wanted us down at
7,5632.
260?
Seattle Center
Yep,
6045 at 10,000. Runway 31. Report established on localizer 6045.
Climb and maintain flight level 2101547 heavy.
Seattle Center 4510 inbound at 10,000.
1534 radar contact. Proceed direct breath. Maintain 10,000. Proceed direct breath. Maintain 10,000. 1534. 26901 radar contact.
All right, so get us set up for our landing here. You can see what our current weight is.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Descend and maintain 8,000.
Descend and maintain 8,000. November 1950 Foxtrot.
4189er heavy. Proceed direct micro. Descend and maintain 2,000. Proceed direct micro. Descend and maintain 2,000. 4189er heavy. 4510 radar contact.
Okay.
Maintain
Anyway.
10,000. 4189er heavy. Cleared micro.
What was our weight?
Zulu. Approach at
27,500.
10 right. Report established final track.
Okay, we're looking for speed
Cleared
bugs.
micro RNAV Zulu. Approach at 2,000 runway.
Approach
10
speed
right.
is going to
Report
be
established final
123
track.
knots.
4189er heavy.
And how to figure all this stuff out is in my guide on Patreon if you guys are interested in it.
3920. Expect
So we got
visual
approach speed of 123
runway
knots, final
08.
reference 112 knots. Let's check our radios.
Visual approach runway
110.5 is the localizer for our runway, and final course heading should be 283 degrees.
3343 at 4,000.
So we'll keep that at the ready.
3920. Descend and maintain 800.
Start slowing her down to 260 knots.
3920.
Coming up on 10,000 feet. Let's come up top, turn our lights back on.
4193 radar contact. Proceed direct Sierra Lima. Continue climb 10,000. Proceed direct Sierra Lima. Continue climb 10,000.
And let's slow us down to below 250 knots. We've already breached it.
Rod. Proceed direct with.
Proceed direct with November 1950 Foxtrot.
All right.
November 1950 Foxtrot. Cleared with RNAV Zulu. Approach at 2,000. Runway 28 left. Report established final track.
Cleared with RNAV Zulu. Approach at 2,000. Runway 28 left. Report established final track. November 1950 Foxtrot.
21905 radar contact.
All right. Let's start slowing us down again. Look for 210 knots here. Actually, we're going to go down 200 knots.
666 radar contact. Proceed direct Alpha Sierra Tango. Continue climb.
All right, below 230 knots. Going flaps 2.
Cleared visual approach at 900. Runway 13 right. Report runway in sight. Cleared visual approach at 900.
Now, the reason why I did the heading mode is because if you see here, there's that arrow pointing up towards Widmer. So the aircraft wanted to turn towards Widmer when we got to ISACs, and I hadn't gotten the command yet to turn. So I let it continue to roll and kept it in heading mode. And then shortly after I put it in heading mode, they gave us the command. So now we have to sort of backtrack a little bit. So that is one of the things that I would like to see adjusted, and that's what I was talking about earlier. I think those waypoint sections need to be increased. I think they need to be a lot larger to account for those kind of deviations and count for the GPS system so it can do what it needs to do. But now we're on approach to it, and actually now it's trying to turn us around. We'll see what it does here in a second. I'm watching that wide arrow, and we'll see if it turns when we get there. Come on. Come on. Showing us 9 miles away still.
1547 heavy. Climb and maintain.
All right, so in this case, gosh darn,
Climb and maintain.
heading mode.
Flight level 330 1547 heavy.
Yeah, see, it still wants us to turn around, so I'm going to turn around. We're going to go back into heading mode. Because it is, I'm telling you, it's critical that you watch that.
Seattle Center 1899.
You need to make sure you hit those targets.
Climbing 10,000. 1899er radar contact. Proceed direct Papa November Delta. Continue climb 10,000. Proceed direct Pop November
So it is
Delta.
definitely not
Climb 10,000. 1899.
It's not perfect, that's for sure.
Seattle Center, 4850, Alpha Sierra Tango 3, departure at 1,700, climbing 6,000.
Yes, it wants us to reach Widmer.
Continue climb 6,000.
Continue climb 6,000, 4850. Seattle Center, 8481, inbound, Uniform Lima Echo Sierra Sierra at 10,000.
8481, radar contact, maintain 10,000.
Maintain 10,000, 8481.
Oops. All right, so now it's reducing. I'm gonna go back into nav mode. And I think there are ways to edit the flight plan when it first pops up, so I don't want you guys to think you're stuck with this. When the flight plan first pops up before you accept it, I believe you can delete certain parts out of it. Alright, so now, yeah, now we're on the approach. So I'm going to go into approach mode. I'm going to set the localizer.
Established on localizer.
26901, contact Seattle Tower 119.9.
Now it does want us kicked off a little bit off to the right.
119.9, 26901.
Still just watching that arrow.
1534, descend and maintain 3,300. Descend and maintain 3,300. 1534. 1534, cleared breath ILS. Approach at 3,300. Runway 17.
Okay, it actually seems to like that track.
Cleared breath ILS. Approach at 3,300. Runway 17. Report established on localizer 1534.
Okay, I'm going to go back into approach mode, go back into nav mode. And so far the arrow is working perfectly with us.
3125, inbound, Hevel at 8,100, climbing 10,000.
13907, descend and maintain 5,600.
Localizer, we're at 7 miles. So now it's time to start setting up for landing. Taking us down to our reference speed.
Continue climb 10,000. 13907, cleared Uniform Bravo Golf ILS.
Landing gears coming down. Flaps 3 coming down.
13 right, report established on localizer.
Cleared Uniform Bravo Golf ILS. Approach at 3,300, runway 13 right, report established on localizer 13907. Continue climb 10,000, 3125.
1161, descend and maintain 2,700.
Descend and maintain 2,700, 1161.
1161, cleared Uniform Bravo Golf, ILS, approach at 2,700, runway 31, report established on localizer.
All right, I'm going to report us established.
Cleared Uniform Bravo Golf.
We're still making the
ILS,
turn, but I'm going
approach
to
at
start it now.
2,700, runway 31, report established on localizer 1161. November 1950 Foxtrot established on final track.
November 1950 Foxtrot.
And we should be descending. We're not. There. I don't know why approach mode got turned off again. Oh, because I turned the nav mode on. That was smart.
118.7, November 1950 Foxtrot. 21. Portland Tower, November 1950 Foxtrot, on final, 28 left. November 1950 Foxtrot, continue approach.
Descend, baby, descend.
Cleared to land, 28 left, November 1950 Foxtrot.
Whoa, there's an airplane there.
50.
November 1950 Foxtrot, vacate left with Foxtrot, when vacated, contact ground, 121.9er.
Vacate left.
with Foxtrot, when vacated, contact ground,
I don't know. I missed Foxtrot.
November 1950 Foxtrot.
Oh, vacate left with Foxtrot. That's probably ATIS.
Portland ground, November 1950 Foxtrot, runway vacated with Foxtrot.
Runway is not vacated.
1950 Foxtrot, taxi to, parking, 665 Foxtrot, Charlie, Foxtrot, Echo 4.
Okay, so that part's a little weird.
Taxi to, parking, 66, via Foxtrot, Charlie, Foxtrot, Echo.
Alright, but we've got our taxi instructions. We can clean up the aircraft. We can start the APU. We can turn off our landing lights. Recog lights and pulse lights. Actually, pulse lights we'll leave on. Okay. And let's continue our taxi. Disable vertical speed. Disable the flight directors. And following our taxi arrow. So again, it's guiding us all the way to our taxi gate. And now it wants us to turn here. Oh, no, it doesn't. Looked like it did. Looked like it was about to turn. It's this one it wants to turn, I see. Wants us to turn here again. Looks like this is our parking. It is. Whoa. Set our parking brake. Let's turn the APU gen on. Engine generator is off. Close the bus tie. And let's shut the engines off. And the final step to do on your FS HUD is to close the flight plan. So, guys, obviously, like I said, it's got a couple issues, but I think a lot of those issues could have been worked out had I taken the time to actually draw out the flight plan and see where it wanted to go. Like I said, I think the biggest problem was that direct to ISACs. I think if I had removed that and just had the direct to Widmere, I think we would have been just fine and everything would have been very, very smooth there. Again, though, I would like to see those trigger zones, if you will, at which point you're given the next command. I'd like to see those enlarged. They're very last minute, it feels like. But other than that, I think this is a fantastic start. I think it is worth the money that they're asking for it. I think it has a ton of potential, but it definitely adds a lot of immersion and a lot of ambience to the flight. Keeps the flight from being so dull and so quiet. Keeps you from getting bored while you're up there. And as you can see, it guided us from our parking in San Francisco all the way to our parking spot here in Portland, Oregon. So this was an absolutely joy to experience. I really am glad that I purchased this software, and I hope that you guys can take my word for it. Again, there are a couple of issues. I have seen a couple of problems with third-party software or third-party scenery, so keep that in mind. All right, guys, as always, let me know what you guys think down below, especially if you've purchased it already. Give your feedback back to the community. Stay safe and healthy, and I will see you guys in the next one.